Hi, welcome to An Abundance of Books. My name is Julia, and our video today was inspired, first of all, by everybody. Literally everybody and their mother has done this video. But secondly, because my current read is You're All Prepared and Can't Remember the Name of the Book. I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jennette McCurdy. And it's incredible. Like, I've been hearing a lot of buzz about this book. No one really goes into depth about what it's about, but everyone says it's incredible and it's like sold out everywhere. And yeah, it turns out it's incredible. I'm about halfway through it right now, but I went and looked at the Goodreads, and right now it has an average of 4.73, which is the highest thing I've ever seen on Goodreads. And I checked, and yeah, it's the highest thing on my TBR on what I've read, and I just thought it would be interesting, now that I'm already thinking about it, to go through what all the other highly rated books on Goodreads are. So first we'll talk about ones that I've read, and then we'll talk about ones that I haven't read, maybe build a future TBR, who knows. But we should probably talk about I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jennette McCurdy first. This is about Jennette McCurdy, who is a child actor, and it's about her very tumultuous relationship with her mother and her career, and it's wild. It's very much mostly about her relationship with her mother, and there's content warnings for a bunch of stuff in there, but it feels like a personal memoir, like a millennial memoir that I don't think I've read before, because we all watched iCarly growing up and we think we know these people, and we sure don't. It's a wild story. It's very sad. I don't think you can go more than a page without having a searingly sad moment, but it's incredibly well written and I'm absolutely loving it. I can't imagine not giving it 5 stars and contributing to that already ridiculously high rating. But maybe there'll be some books in here that I don't agree with, so let's open up my Goodreads. I'm not going to talk through everything on here. I imagine there'll be quite a bit of nonfiction, just things that I don't have a lot to say, or things that have such a low readership that they don't count. So I'm going to editorialize this a little bit. But we don't have that issue with the first one, because the first one are volumes 2 and 3 in the Heartstopper series. You can see them, I'm not going to pull them out. Everyone knows what Heartstopper is. Graphic novel about Nick and Charlie falling in love. It is kind of surprising to me that it has such a high rating, because it's a graphic novel, and not to say that the books don't have substance, but they're more just like a fun time. I think I gave one of them 5 stars and one of them 4 stars, so I'm with you in the general consensus, but it is interesting to me that they have such a high rating, though of course sequels are always going to be higher anyway. And then Heartstopper Volume 1, I should just scroll a little bit. The next one up is A Prayer for the Crown Shy by Becky Chambers. This is a brand new release this year. It only has about 7,000 ratings, so that is really low. And it's a sequel. I give this 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. I don't know that it's amazing. I feel like, especially compared to some of Becky Chambers' other works, Wayfarer series I think is stronger than this one, but generally I'm happy to see Becky Chambers on here. I'm not mad about this one. The next one I am mad about, though. It's Project Hail Mary by Angie Weir. I don't get it. I think it was a fine book. It was perfectly serviceable. I get that people like the character that we don't talk about, but I had a lot of issues with this book. I had some issues with the plotting, I had issues with the pacing. I thought that the sciencey stuff that Angie Weir is so well known for doing really well just wasn't as strong in this. Things would happen and I wasn't following the science line, whereas in his other book, The Martian, that was never a problem for me. I think it's a perfectly fine book. If it's your favorite book, don't come for me. I give it 3 stars. It's not bad. I just don't think it deserves to be this high on the list. Especially considering the next entry, which is The Hate Gift by Angie Thomas, which is a widely renowned, award-winning book. It was a really big deal. This is one of those books that even non-bookish people know a good amount about. I read it, I gave it 5 stars. I think it read a little YA for my taste, but that's obviously just a me thing. It's a YA book. But the writing's really good, the subject matter is obviously very relevant, and I think it's a really enjoyable and accessible reading experience. And it won a bunch of prizes, didn't it? It's not going to tell me. It has also 750,000 ratings. That's wild. After that, we have another one on the shelf. So weird. Skyward by Brandon Sanderson. I am surprised that this is as high up as it is. I assume it's a combination of things. Brandy Sandy is well beloved. This is a YA sci-fi by him. which isn't his usual thing, but I think it is really well executed in here and maybe a bit more sophisticated of a YA. I am curious what the demographic of this is, because I do think it's written for YA, but Brandon Sanderson is an adult author, so I wonder if a bunch of adults are picking it up. Not relevant to this conversation, I just thought it was interesting. This is a story about a human colony who have been driven underground because of some interplanetary wars, and pilots are the most revered people in their society, and our main character Spence's father was a pilot before he deserted, basically, and she wants to become a pilot and prove that everyone was wrong about him. It's got really good action, it's got a really good cast of characters. The only thing that's not great about this is that it very clearly sets up for a sequel. Like, this is not the whole story. And I read the sequel and I didn't enjoy it as much. After that, we've got Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. Of course, this is on here. Everyone loves it. I have yet to read the sequel, so I imagine that'll be on the next list that we look at. And this was very interesting for me going in because I had heard so much about it. And I agree that the cast of characters is really good, but I don't think the writing is super strong. I think that the book is too long and a bit overwritten, and it doesn't focus on the things I want it to focus on. It's good. Don't get me wrong, it's very good, but I think I expected more out of it. But this is also the kind of book that sort of invites fandom to it, which I think is probably the reason why it's so high, and like has a big community around it with lots of fanfic and art and stuff associated with it, which is super fun. After that, we've got Becoming by Michelle Obama. This is sort of my gold standard of what a really amazing book on Goodreads is. Right now it's got a 4.49 average rating, which was probably the highest I'd seen at the time, and I've just read all of those books more recently than that. I guess that's true. This book is everywhere, and it's popular for a reason. Getting to see her view on things, how she never really set out to be in politics, how she feels about everything. It's all really interesting, really compelling. Audiobook narrated by her, of course, recommend. And then the book right after it is also a memoir, Trevor Was Born a Crime. This one I gave 4 stars, and I think that it was really good, but in terms of what I want from a Trevor Noah story, this isn't it, because it's strictly about his childhood growing up in South Africa, and that is all really interesting, but we never really get to see him become who he is now and have him reflect on stuff like that. I don't know, just the format of stories didn't really work for me, because it was about like, here's an event, here's the story around it, rather than like the story of my life, I guess. Can't believe everything is in reach. This is so lucky for me. The next book is The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. What I call my favorite book, if it is possible to have a favorite book. I'm really surprised that this has such a high average rating because it is very hyped. I will not say overhyped, but I think that people will go into this already knowing that it is beloved, and that can often affect your rating of a thing. But I'm happy that it didn't. This book is perfection to me. The writing, the characters, the pacing, the plot. I have nothing bad to say about this. This is about Evelyn Hugo, who is a Hollywood starlet, reflecting on her life, telling her life story to a journalist, and we find out why she had 7 husbands and who her true love was. I love the way this is broken up in terms of which husband we're on. This is a book that made me weep and also throw it across the room, which is all I want in a book. I know that I'm due for a reread of this, and I'm absolutely terrified that it won't hold up. I'm sure that it will. It being so high up, like, there's no way that it can't be amazing, but I just have so many feelings. And I think this is our 10th book, if I can count, which is a very interesting way to leave off this section, because it's The Help. Who's it by? Kathryn Stockett. It looks like she hasn't really written anything else. This is very interesting. So this is something I read a long time ago. The book came out in 2009, so I probably read it around then, when I was in high school. Yeah, I probably would have read it when I was in high school. That's really upsetting, just in terms of the fact that time passes. But The Help is a very interesting thing to have on this list. It's got a 4.47, and there's been a lot of discourse around this, I think particularly after the movie came out, about its very white savior complex. This is probably the story that sort of brought that into the public eye and started the discussion around it. Not that it hadn't been present earlier, but people were more waking up to it. Goodreads says that I gave the book 4 stars, which makes sense. Like, I don't have a very clear memory of this at all. Take everything with a grain of salt, but I imagine for it to get that big, it would have had to have good writing and plotting and characters and all that stuff. It's just that it has a very racist undertone going through it. Maybe not even undertone, overtone. But it is very surprising that a book like this, that was probably chosen for book clubs everywhere, has maintained such a high average rating, especially for its 2.5 million ratings. I wish I had more to say about this. I feel like I should have done some research, but if you remember the hype around The Help or have theories about why it is still so high on this list, let me know. So there you go. Those are the top 10 most highly rated books that I have read according to Goodreads. Now I'm curious what is on my want to read. I do look at this quite a bit. Often when I'm feeling slumpy, I'll just sort by highest average rating just to be like, what is going to give me the best shot at having a good reading experience? But I haven't committed to memory, so let's see what happens. Again, I'm going to editorialize this. A lot of them are nonfiction or like brand new releases. I'm immediately seeing Babel by R.F. Kuang, which I don't know if I want to read. It shouldn't be for me. It's historical fiction, fantasy, 2 genres that I don't like, and yet somehow I'm drawn to it. Nonfiction, nonfiction, nonfiction. All right, the first one we're going to talk about is another one that's right here. What is happening? Mistborn by Brandy Sandy, the first book of Final Empire. No, I have not read it. I know. I think the problem with this for me is that you're committing to the series. Sanderson is famous for his endings. I imagine you get some sort of an ending in here, but you're not going to get the payoff until you read 3 books, which is like 2,500 pages. I'll do it eventually. I'm just rarely drawn to this because it's fantasy and I don't really read fantasy, and like the investment in the world building and the magic system, it just takes a lot for me to get into. But also, now knowing that it has a 4.46, that's kind of wild. That's definitely helping its case, so I'll read it eventually. Let's leave these out so we can build a TBR. Next up is Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. I've been seeing this everywhere. I know people who have read it and loved it. It just looks so fun. It's about an orc who retires from adventuring and opens up a coffee shop, and that's all I need. I think this is a much easier sell for me. Just being nice, cozy, happy. That takes a lot less of my energy to get invested in, and I'm very excited to get to it. That's an interesting one. Okay. Next up, we have The Miracles of the Namiya General Store by Keigo Higashino. I feel like I talk about this book a lot. It's been on TBRs in the past. I still haven't read it. This has a 4.45 average rating. That's so interesting. I didn't know that. This is translated, which I think, how do I say this? In order for a book to get translated, it has to be of a really high quality. Maybe that contributes to it. It also says 14 million copies sold on here, so okay. I believe this is something about some kids who trap themselves in the general store overnight and time travel happens? Something magical happens anyway. A miracle, shall we say. This isn't going well for me because now I want to read these. This is actually extremely appealing. If I can read Miracles of the Namiya General Store and The Final Empire, I feel like those balance each other out really well. Nonfiction, nonfiction. Things that haven't been released yet. Okay, next one. This one might be worse. Aha! How you stay. Next up is Persepolis by Marjane Satrapi. This, I don't know if it's this specific edition on Goodreads, because this is a graphic novel and I think it's split up into multiple editions. This one said complete, so I assume it's complete. This is a memoir of growing up as a girl in revolutionary Iran. I've heard nothing but good things about it. Another graphic novel. People love their graphic novels. A nonfiction graphic novel is a really interesting idea, and I'm very excited to get into this one. The comics are just black and white. That's fine by me. I think, talking about Heartstopper, I do prefer graphic novels that are more doodly, because if it's full-blown art, I have guilt about not spending enough time appreciating the art. But with a doodle like this, I can I can let it go. All right, that's 4. Give me one more. The Trials of Morgan Crow by Jennifer Townsend. I didn't know that this was this high. Is it interesting for a middle grade to be this high? I guess not. I guess people are generally pretty kind to middle grade, at least I would hope so. But also, this is a booktube darling and people recommend it, so there's obviously an appeal for people who are significantly out of middle grade. I think it's a long series. I think there's like 5 books at this point. I don't know if you have to read all of them or if I'll get by reading just one. And I think it's some sort of chosen one magical school situation. Really don't know. That's one that I'm rarely drawn to. I think because I tried to do cleanups of my Goodreads shelves every once in a while, and I think I leave middle grade on there because, again, that's a much lower entry bar for me. I'm looking at the next books because we've done 5. We're done. But I do just want to talk about the next 3 are all really interesting to me. We've got the 5th season by N.K. Jemisin, which is nothing short of beloved. Then we've got 11/22/63 by Stephen King, which is the JFK assassination time travel thing, which I'm glad I didn't pull because this is chunky enough. That book has 849 pages, but I am really interested in it. I don't know why, but I do want to read it. And then after that is Nettle and Bone by T. Kingfisher, which has been super hyped recently, and I want to read it. This is the one with Bone Dog, right? It doesn't say, but it does say a chicken possessed by a demon, which is basically the same thing. So yeah, Goodreads might have good taste. I don't know. So if we were going to build a TBR, it would be these, Legends and Lattes, and Morgan Crow. No promises, except that I will try to prioritize these. Everything's a priority, though. I don't have time. I'll do my best. If anything, this is motivating me to do a TBR cleanup so that I can get to the books that I'm really excited about sooner. Anyway, that's it for this very chatty video. Thank you for joining me. I hope that you enjoyed, got something out of this, and I'll see you very soon.